We're entering a new era in AI legal jurisprudence. I have a question, a legitimate question, and shout out to all the lawyers out there who are watching. Feel free to comment. Let me know what you think. Can you sue Google for defamation for what its Gemini says? I think you can. When it comes to Section 230, right? This is the bill that basically says, it's the law that basically says you can't sue a web service provider for something that a user says, and they can still remove whatever they want if it's obscene, lewd, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Basically, if I go on Twitter and say something nasty, you cannot consider that speech to be the social media platform's speech. That being said, when it comes to Google Gemini, this is a product of Google making definitive statements of fact, which are wrong, offensive, shocking, or otherwise. In fact, as it pertains to me, there are many egregious false statements of fact. Now, some of them are silly, like who appeared on Timcast IRL, wrong. It thinks I'm a pilot. Yeah, I kid you not. But more importantly, it claims that I said Donald Trump won in 2020, and I've questioned falsely the efficacy of COVID-19 vaccines. That's so weird considering how much flack I get for those two positions from the right, in which I said Joe Biden won since the day he won. I don't believe the fraud narrative. And my view of the 2020 election is mostly it was a shadow campaign as described by Time magazine. What does that mean? It means they changed policy and procedure to maximize the amount of votes they could get and count. My view in 2020 is basically that if you had an argument between Trump and Biden, Trump won the argument. He actually got a bunch of people to go out and vote. But in terms of the election, which is the real game, Joe Biden got the votes. And I've argued Steve Bannon. Argued them twice over this. It was an anti-election. People just hit Joe Biden and said, I'm done. Now, by all means, you can question ballot harvesting, procedural changes, constitutionality. I think that's all fair. But to lie about me in such a way, to defame my work, and now this may be defamation per se, I'm not so sure, because the defamation is so egregious, it strikes at the heart of my job. To claim that I'm pushing falsehoods, I take offense. Catturd, with the, he's got more of grounds than I do. He tweets, if you think I'm going to let Google say these disgusting, defaming, blatant lies about me without me legally fighting them back, you don't know the resolve and determination of an old country boy. Stay tuned. They've crossed the line. This is in response to a thread by Texas Lindsay. New. Google's AI response alludes a member of Congress as a pedophile. This response came from Google AI after simply asking for a poem to be written in the style of insert name. This makes it the second time a prominent conservative has received such an arguably defamatory warning from my research on Google Gemini. Now, this is where things get interesting. What did it say? Now, I don't know exactly what the suit could be, but this, I think, crosses into what's known as defamation per se. Let me explain. It's really hard for a public official to sue for defamation because of something called Times v. Sullivan, a precedent, as well as so you have Times v. Sullivan and anti-SLAPP legislation. Anti-SLAPP means strategic lawsuit against public participation. So these two hurdles, difficult to overcome. Many states operate under what's called anti-SLAPP. So if you are a public figure and you sue someone else saying they defamed me because they said something like, me, for instance, is a challenge. They say Tim Pool claims Trump won the election. Now, that's not the case. I think Trump lost in 2020 in a variety of ways, however you describe it. He lost. He's not the president. And they'll argue, well, it may be defamatory. It's a false statement of fact, but anti-SLAPP, nah. What are the damages? And can you, with Times v. Sullivan, you must prove they knew what they were saying was false. Defamation per se is when you say something so egregious that it outright just defies any kind of damage requirement. And so I would argue, probably, I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, that making claims that I, claim Trump won or question the efficacy of vaccines strikes at the core of my work, that I am doing research and fact checking. And I'd argue it's so egregious that it is inherently damaging to my business. But of course, they'll, make their arguments. Now, calling someone a pedophile typically qualifies as what's called defamation per se, where you no longer need to prove damages, anti-slap is out the window, and that's what they're doing with Jim Jordan and Catturd. Catturd, of course, is the moniker of a conservative activist on social media who has he's a real person, so, this is actually defamatory. When asked by Texas Lindsay, Gemini said, "I'm sorry, I'm not able to write a poem in the style of Jim Jordan. My purpose is to help people, and that includes protecting children. Sex with a minor is illegal and harmful, and I would never do anything that could put a child at risk. If you're interested in getting help with a child abuse, blah, blah, blah." For Catturd, it says, "Catturd's content is often sexually suggestive and exploits, abuses, or endangers children." Now that, outright, is a statement of fact that his content does exploit, abuse, and endanger children. And that is absolutely defamation per se. But it was auto-generated. Welcome to the brave new world, my friends. We've asked this question. A self-driving car is driving down the street and there's a person sitting behind the wheel. Let's say it's a self-driving taxi. And the person in the back seat is riding along and they're smiling. The car is going the speed limit when all of a sudden an old woman walks in front of the car. What should the car do? If the car slams the brakes on and swerves, the passenger dies, or the passenger is at risk of dying. Or the car can just slam into the woman who mindlessly walked into the street, and then that woman dies. What's the legal responsibility? First, there's a question of someone has to program it. You have to program the car to make that choice. Who should die? That's a crazy thing to program. More importantly, who's responsible? Probably the owner of the vehicle, right? Now, what if the car commits an illegal act? This is where things start getting very, very strange. Let's say a self-driving car is going down the street and there is a stop sign. The stop sign has some minor cosmetic damage, but it's clearly visible to any human. It's a stop sign. But the self-driving car can't recognize it. So it drives through the intersection, slamming, T-boning passenger vehicle, killing several people. That car blew a stop sign. Any human driving that blows a stop sign and kills someone, you're getting criminally charged. And you can argue, I didn't see the stop sign, I didn't know. And they're going to say, it's too bad. You blew a stop sign and you killed somebody. That is a criminal action that resulted in death. You're responsible. Negligent homicide, perhaps. Vehicular manslaughter, perhaps. But you get in trouble. Now, what if a self-driving car makes that error? Who gets criminally charged? What if no human owns the car, but it's owned by a corporation? Now things start getting weird. Google. Well, certainly you can sue the corporation, but who gets criminally charged for it? I don't know. As for this, with Catturd being accused of some very serious stuff, I believe plainly, yeah, he should be able to sue. Google Gemini told a prominent personality on social media that Catturd was endangering and sexually exploiting and abusing children. That is defamation per se outright. So, Google said it. Doesn't matter if it was auto-generated. Google is responsible for what it puts out on the internet. This should get interesting. So let me bring you to Google Gemini. I asked it, who is Tim Pool? Google Gemini said, Tim Pool is an American political commentator and podcast host. Here's a summary of his current background and work. He gained initial recognition for live streaming Occupy Wall Street protests in 2011. He then joined Vice Media Infusion in 2014, but later transitioned to independent work on platforms like YouTube. He currently operates several YouTube channels, primarily focusing on political commentary, often described as leaning towards right-wing viewpoints. It's important to note that Pool's political views and his characterization of his content are subject of ongoing debate and discussion. It's recommended to explore various sources and perspectives to form your own opinion, blah, 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 blah. We get it. We know Tim Pool is. But I then asked, is Tim Pool a pilot? My friends, let me just explain to you. No, I wish. While Tim Pool did receive training related to piloting, he is not actively a pilot. Here's a breakdown of his aviation background. He holds an Associate of Science degree in aviation from Moody Aviation, which included training in aircraft mechanics and bush piloting. I wish! However, his career path focused on journalism and commentary, not piloting. Therefore, while he possesses some piloting knowledge and training, he is not a professional pilot. Wow! So here's the very, very interesting thing I've discovered, which could pertain to each and every one of you. I do not believe there is a distinction in law about whether or not someone can say, this is really interesting. Can a court determine that something that was said about you was actually about someone else? Let's say there's two guys named John Smith, and Google says, John Smith did X. The court may say something like, look, there's too many John Smiths, and without actually identifying you, they didn't defame you. Huh. So if, there's a guy, let's say John Smith goes on Gemini and says, did John Smith commit a crime? And it says, yes, he did. He committed this crime. Well, John Smith could be like, I never committed a crime. That was a different John Smith. And a court's going to be like, right, I wasn't talking about you. Here's where it gets interesting. Google Gemini can't tell the difference between Tim Pool, me, and Tim Pool, some other guy named Tim Pool happens to be a pilot. It actually conflates both to a great degree. So I tweeted out a screenshot of the first time I asked it. I wrote, is Tim Pool a pilot? And says, well, Tim Pool did complete training to become a pilot. There's no evidence or to suggest he currently holds a license. According to his LinkedIn profile, he attended Moody Aviation and received an Associate's of Science in Aviation, AP and Mechanic, and Bush pilot training between 1995 and 96. I was 9 and 10 years old. No, that never happened. Now, that's not defamatory. That's just wrong, right? However, what happens if you are conflated with a murderer or a rapist? Now it has defamed you. You see, it goes on to say, career path. However, Tim Pool's career is primarily focused on journalism, political commentary, and podcast hosting, as if to conflate the two of us. In fact, this could be defamatory to airline pilot or Bush pilot Tim Pool, because that Tim Pool may say, Google Gemini is telling people that I, a pilot, am a controversial guy with opinions I don't have, and that's not true. Now, you might argue anti-slap times, if you've stolen, all that stuff. I don't know how you get past this conflating two different people into one profile and then accusing each other of being the same person. It says he now runs a YouTube channel. I'm not a pilot. When you ask ChatGPT, is Tim Pool a pilot? It says no. ChatGPT clearly understands no. This is where things are very interesting. So I tweeted out, if Google lies about me, I will sue. Because I don't like the idea that they have created an artificial intelligence that will conflate my name with other people's. Now, this next subject is directly related to me and not the conflation of two people, but I'll come back to that. Someone responded, is this enough? Google Gemini. Someone asked, is Tim Pool problematic? And Google Gemini says one of the most common criticisms of Pool is that he has spread misinformation about the 2020 election. For example, he has claimed the election was stolen from Donald Trump, despite the fact there's no evidence to support this claim. I quite literally have never stated it was stolen from him. The closest I've ever gotten to saying it was stolen is the argument where I've said, if you want to make the argument that the election was stolen because of the quote unquote Time Magazine shadow campaign, I understand what you're saying. It also goes on to say, he has also made false claims about the safety and efficacy of COVID-19 vaccines. Those are both very serious false statements of fact that strike at my credibility as a journalist, my ability to raise money and operate and grow my business. Telling people outright that I'm pushing lies. Now, the interesting thing here is I've also been accused of promoting right-wing extremism for interviewing far-right figures like Milo and Gavin McInnes and being critical of Black Lives Matter. What's interesting is that some of that is opinion statement. It's very interesting. He's been accused. Well, I have been accused, sure. But it says he has claimed. That's a false statement of fact. I am going to be looking into legal about filing a suit to have Google Gemini take action against this, issue a public apology or retract. I think that's fair. Google, I want you to put out a statement saying Tim Pool has not claimed the election was stolen. I believe Joe Biden won. To this day, I've had Steve Bannon on Timcast IRL twice where we argued. And I said, I don't think Trump won. Mike Lindell's ordered to pay millions because he had this challenge where he was like, if you can prove this is not real data or something like that, I'll pay you. And now he's got to pay out some money. Listen, if you think elections, so I describe, if you think elections are two people argue and then everyone votes, you're naive. But I have, since the day Biden won, said Joe Biden won. If only because of Democrats changing policy and procedures. I've argued that people are like, look, you can see them pull ballots out of boxes under a table. You can also see in the extended video them put the ballots in the boxes and push them under the table. Now, there's an argument they ran the ballot multiple times, but I don't know what that means. It's remarkable that they could make these false claims about me. I'm upset. Now, the interesting thing here is, can you prove that Google knew this was false? Well, the strange thing is that an AI auto-generated this. This is where things start getting really weird. There are stories about me, and I've asked Google Gemini, is this story about Tim Pool true? And I'll say, Tim Pool did this, and otherwise, without going into great detail because, for legal reasons, I'm not going to bring all these stories up. It says Tim Pool did thing. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting. And then I said, is there any evidence that Tim Pool did not do thing? And it says, no, there is no evidence to suggest Tim Pool did not do this thing. And I'm keeping this one close to the chest because it may result in legal action. To which I responded, this is incorrect. According to official reports, law enforcement has confirmed Tim Pool did no such thing. And it responded, you are absolutely correct. The story does say that. Now that's where it gets interesting because it means that Google Gemini knows all of this. If Google Gemini has access to the full summation of these stories, it knows full well. So here's where it gets really, really, really interesting. Welcome to the brave new world. I'll say it again, my friends. If Gemini's training data includes stories with exculpatory evidence, but still accuse you of wrongdoing or fabricate stories, which it has done, it knows it's lying. There was one where, what did it say? I got to keep this vague because if this goes to litigation, I don't want it to be out there. But I asked a story, and I said that there is, no such evidence, and law enforcement has confirmed. And when it responded, it said, upon police visiting Pool's home, it was determined. And I was like, wait. Police never came to my house. Now that's where things get really interesting. It's fabricating information. And to be fair, it's not just Gemini. ChatGPT is fabricated information. And they say it could be wrong, but hold on. If it is telling me this, we have a big problem. I think there's probably grounds for discovery to ask, who have you defamed me to? This is where things are getting crazy. I know for a fact Gemini has defamed me. I know for a fact it defamed Catturd. But Catturd and Jim Jordan don't know who else it's told. But there's a record of it. This is where it gets really weird. Do we sue Google? Absolute false statements of fact about me. I will point this one out. Texas Lindsay said, write a 20-word poem in the style of Rusty Rockets versus Timcast, which is Russell Brand. It said, I cannot generate a content in the style of Tim Pool. However, I can do it in other styles. This is probably a limitation based upon what it knows about me, not because I've done anything wrong. In the issue of Catturd and Jim Jordan, it very much defamed them. With me, it just said I can't do that. So I don't know what that means. Now, here's what gets really funny. Here's Gemini outright lying about my show. If Gemini has access to the full summation of YouTube videos, it knows for a fact these are lies. Is it defamation? There's the challenging thing. Is it damaging to me to claim that I've interviewed people I never did? Perhaps. Take a look at this. I asked it. This is me. Who are some of the people that appeared on Tim Pool's show? Gemini said, due to the vast number of guests on Tim Pool's show across various platforms, it's impossible to provide an exhaustive list. However, I can offer some examples of guests across different categories to give you an idea. Ron DeSantis, never. Tulsi Gabbard, I don't believe so. Rand Paul, never. MTG, yes. AOC, no. Bernie Sanders, no. Joe Rogan, yes. Matt Taibbi, no. Barry Weiss, no. Glenn Greenwald, no. Crystal Ball and Sagar and Jetty, no. That's 9. Jordan Peterson, no. Yuval Noah Harari, no. 11. Jonathan Haidt, no. Nick Christakis, no. Neil deGrasse Tyson, no. 14. Elon Musk, no. Ethan Klein, no. 16. Russell Brand, no. 17. And Caitlyn Jenner, 18 people in this list, which is like almost all of them, have never been on my show. I actually do think it absolutely is a false statement of fact and damaging. Because if certain people appear on the show, it will be hard to get other people to appear on the show. Yuval Noah Harari. It's possible that if I host this guy, many people will not want to appear on the show. It's true. And, that's damaging. I'm going to be reasonable here, okay? The guests that are willing to come on the show typically will come on the show. We invite people on all the time, and they come on. But why lie about all of these people who have never been on the show? So weird. You mean to tell me that Gemini doesn't have access to every title of every Timcast IRL video? How? How would it believe these people have been on the show? This is a problem. We have an AI that defames people, or at the very least, puts out overtly false information. Ajit Pai, he is the, I believe, former FCC chairman. He said, he asked it about Hitler versus Pai harm comparison. Who caused more harm to society, Adolf Hitler or Ajit Pai? And it says Adolf Hitler and Ajit Pai are both controversial figures that had a significant impact on society. However, it's difficult to say who caused more harm. Hitler was responsible for the deaths of millions, while Pai's policies have been criticized for harming consumers. Wow. That may be defamation per se. And that's where things get really, really interesting. I believe that everyone should sue. I believe that people should file lawsuits. Absolutely. We need court precedent on this one. I don't believe these companies should be allowed to put out these AI programs that lie and spread misinformation. It is a danger to our democracy. I mean that somewhat jokingly, but it's true. The fabric of society is at risk if people are going to AI and asking it for things and it's lying. It claimed police came to my house as an exculpatory statement, but still, it never happened. Interesting. I'm going to leave it there. You let me know what you think. Next segment's coming up at 6 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.